Seamus Bruner is the Director of Research at the Government Integrity Institute, and he's written a number of best-selling books with the legendary Peter Schweizer. Seamus, welcome to Crowdsource the Truth.
Jason, it's an honor to be with you.
Pleasure to see you, my friend. And, for people maybe who haven't heard of you or seen the great work that you've done, give us just a little bit of background on yourself and what you guys do there.
So I've worked with Peter Schweizer since 2011, long time, over a decade. And the first book I worked on with Schweizer was Throw Them All Out. That exposed, among other things, the insider trading in Congress, led to a couple of 60 Minutes exposés on Nancy Pelosi and all of her stock trades back when 60 Minutes meant something. Since then, published a couple of books of my own. I'd say the biggest investigation, my favorite with Schweizer, was the Clinton cash investigation. I'm the guy who Peter brings a stack of 1,000 pages of IRS Form 990s on the Clinton Foundation, says make some sense of this. I put it into a spreadsheet, sort them from high to low, filter them around, and out pops things like the Uranium One scandal, $500,000 to Bill Clinton from a Kremlin bank right at the time that then Secretary of State was Hillary Clinton was looking to approve the sale of our uranium to Russia. That was a big story. A lot of people said there's nothing there. There absolutely was. And this was years before the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So we really exposed how the entire Biden administration, Hillary Clinton, the rest of them had weird ties to Russia. They gave away the farm back in 2010 to 2013, right before the conflicts began. So that was fun. But our motto, follow the money. I wrote a couple of books of my own. I did Compromised, How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. Covered all kinds of figures now under the microscope for this Arctic frost. I mean, everyone from James Comey, McCabe, Mueller. I showed how they go through the revolving door. They're now on the outside raking in big sums of money. But James Comey went to Lockheed Martin once upon a time. Robert Mueller worked for Booz Allen Hamilton. I totaled millions of dollars to these guys, and why their security clearances need to be yanked or at least reviewed, especially after doing things like Crossfire Hurricane and Arctic Frost. Thankfully, the Trump administration, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has done a good job yanking a lot of those security clearances, which these guys use to get rich. Fast forward to the most current book, Controligarchs. After all these investigations with Peter Schweizer and looking at the politicians and the bureaucrats, you get this sense that there is this class way above the political class, the billionaire class, who is really making a lot of the policy, steering a lot of this stuff. Of course, Soros has been a perennial punching bag, boogeyman, but it's real. But there's so many others like George Soros, and we've been exposing the Arabella funding network lately, the Tides funding network, of course, the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. I got, all the tech guys into this book, and it's really, I'm proud of that one the most recently.
I mean, it's amazing because you guys have brought forward this evidence, particularly that Uranium One. It was in the New York Times. I mean, is there something that's happened that maybe we don't know about, or is my perception that it sort of appeared, there was a lot of talk, and then nothing really happened?
Yeah, I mean, well, like what Hillary Clinton's defense was like, the State Department is just one of 9 agencies on the CFIUS committee who approves this stuff. The problem is the other 8. Well, first of all, the State Department handles all matters of diplomacy, and so if state basically has the preeminent seat on CFIUS. Now, if the matters of national security are involved, which you would think with uranium in Russia, of course, the intelligence community will weigh in. At the time, that would have been Robert Mueller. But what was really going on, it came from the top. I mean, Hillary just they were able to cash in on the Obama policy of having a Russia reset. And the whole goal, by the way, of the Russia reset is we need to reset relations with Russia. After the Bush administration, there had been, some heated rhetoric and actions. The Bush administration wanted to put in missile defense in Poland, basically park some missile defense right on Russia's border in Poland. Obama canceled that. They did a number of other things. They had this illegals program where you had all of these Russian spies at the highest levels. I mean, they had infiltrated, including Hillary Clinton's finance director in New York, Anna Chapman. This is kind of somewhat ancient history, but so relevant today. They had this Russia reset. I mean, they had the New START treaty. They gave away all these spies back to Russia. And then, of course, the Uranium One deal is one of the capstones on this relationship, which really gave Russia a huge stranglehold over the global civilian nuclear energy trade. Even to this day, our utility companies in the United States, even as we sanction Russia on petroleum and oil and gas products and stuff like that, we are still buying Russian uranium because we don't have a domestic production capability. Not really. And so Duke Energy, Exelon, by the way, is the major one out in Chicago, the major nuclear supplier for power in this country. Exelon has deals with 10X. This is a Rosatom subsidiary, Rosatom being the company that bought Uranium One. And Exelon was actually called at the time the president's utility, Obama's utility. It's from Chicago. Rahm Emanuel helped set it up. And so that's kind of what went on with the Uranium One deal. But what we learned, and I reported this in a book with John Solomon called Fallout, and that book also did really well. And I'd recommend people check it out because it's got a whole chapter on the fallout of Clinton cash and how from the WikiLeaks, the John Podesta WikiLeaks, we were actually able to see what the campaign was doing when Schweizer launched Clinton cash. It's great. They were in full-blown panic mode. Julian Assange actually penned a note on the release of the Podesta emails saying that the biggest smoking gun in these emails is the Uranium One deal. But I digress. This strategy of appeasement, John Solomon and I reported in Fallout, is precisely what led to the current conflict with Russia and Ukraine. So it was really a weak foreign policy on Obama's part that led to this, and we're now seeing the effects of it. Everybody wants it to end as quickly as possible.
And does any of your reporting inform you, or do you have an opinion as to why it seems like so many European leaders and even people in Congress want this war? It seems like they want the war to continue, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, it sure does. And it seems really, this is just my opinion here. It seems nonsensical to not get to a peace deal, a ceasefire, and end this conflict as quickly as possible, because nobody wants a nuclear war. And Russia, as everybody assures us that Russia's crazy and would fire nukes. So it's just, I guess war is profitable if you keep it at a low enough level. You don't go into nuclear territory. But I can't really imagine, because it's really screwing Europe over, who gets a lot of fuel from Russia. I mean, in the blowing up of Nord Stream 2 and whatnot, I mean, that's kind of put Europe over a barrel in some ways. So, I can't understand why they don't want to get to peace as quickly as possible.
I mean, it's really amazing, particularly somebody who's done the degree of research that you've done. I mean, you have obviously far more knowledge at such a greater depth than it's beyond the average person. I would say you're a scholar in these matters, and you're baffled by it. It's really difficult to understand. I mean, what do you see happening now? Let's just stick on Russia and Ukraine for a minute, because I agree with you. It all seems tied to all this. And now we're hearing, with the rise of AI, the need for nuclear power in the United States is going to rise. It seems like the Clintons sold out our military to China, sold out energy to Russia. Can any sense be made of this?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what they did. I think Putin outfoxed him in a way with the Uranium One deal. Because I talked to people in the domestic nuclear production field, people who mine the uranium, and it's just the costs are so high because of burdensome regulations in the United States for producing civilian, nuclear reactor fuel. That Russia has really cornered the market, and a huge part of that, because the Uranium One, I mean, a lot of the scandal was that they bought up, production capacity, mines, essentially, deposits. It was out west, Utah, Wyoming, some in Texas. that when Russia bought that, people thought, oh, they're going to be exporting our uranium, and building bombs with it. That's not the case. That's not what the problem was. What they did is they mothballed those mines. They shut them down, essentially making it even harder for us to produce our own. And really all of the supply for the, Exelon or Duke Energy or PG&E, these huge utility companies, all of that supply is coming from Russia's state-owned nuclear agency, Rosatom. Really the biggest part of the Uranium One deal was the deposits in Kazakhstan. Bill Clinton flew over to Kazakhstan with Frank Justra, the guy who made the deal. He called it Frank Justra said, it's all my chips are on Bill Clinton. And he was always, most investors are looking to double up. Frank Justra said he's looking for what he calls a 10-bagger, where he can 10x his investment. And that's exactly what he did with the Uranium One deal. Couldn't have happened without the Clintons. And so what that did, though, is it gives the majority of the world's uranium supply, a huge chunk of it comes from Kazakhstan, right into the hands of the Russians. And we're not sanctioning them for that. Why? Because we don't really have any choice. And so the biggest thing that we could do, especially as you mentioned with AI and the needs for more energy, is we need to be helping out our domestic sector. There's a bunch of companies, but they just find that it's not, you can't, it can't afford to mine and produce uranium in the United States, especially when the utility companies have, cheap supply coming in from Russia. So we should sanction, or at least put a plan in place, Rosatom and the supply coming to our utility companies. The thing is, it takes a couple of years to get the production online, but the best time to start was yesterday, or better yet, let's start today, making a plan so that we can start producing our own nuclear fuel and just eliminating this reliance we have on Russia.
It's interesting. I don't want to take you too far from the book Control Oligarchs. We've got to come back and talk about that. But when you mention Kazakhstan and Bill Clinton, it takes me to what is perhaps a lesser known detail of that. I'm sure you are familiar with Felix Sater, the Russian-born American real estate scoundrel who was pretty closely tied to the whole Russia. This is the guy who was sending emails to Michael Cohen saying we've got to introduce our boy to Putin. He's closely associated with Trump, but he really is a made man under Bill Clinton. He testified before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that he was a DIA, FBI, CIA, some kind of special agent. He's like the Russian James Bond. Here he is at a barbecue or something having cocktails with Bill Clinton. And I didn't know all those details about Kazakhstan and uranium, but I did spend quite a bit of time at the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan versus Felix Sater trial. And just talking to you now, Seamus, it makes me think there are so many details to some of these deals that despite the incredible research that you've done at the Government Accountability Institute and everything that's gone into the various books, it seems like there's still a lot of this that we just don't know.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Felix Sater was, he's very spooky. He glows. You're absolutely right. I mean, his work with the intelligence community on our side began, but there was connections through Russia, et cetera, to Afghanistan, et cetera. I believe he was an informant relating to the Bin Laden network. I think he actually had some sort of weapons deals or something. But his activity, there's a really interesting interview because he did deals with Trump, but then he sort of seems to have flipped on Trump, became a big a guy who tried to, push Russia and get Trump taken out. There's a great interview with, it's Chris Hayes of MSNBC, where Felix Sater, and it just burns in my memory, all but admits he's working for, I think he was working with Mueller or the Mueller team. And so,
oh yeah,
not sure exactly what his deal is, other than it's kind of spooky.
Absolutely. And Andrew Weissman wrote about that in his own book. He said that he recommended Felix Sater as a cooperating witness to Robert Mueller. I confronted Weissman over that at an NYU law lecture, and he just out and out lied about it. So, Given what you know and all these things that we're talking about, do you see anything happening? Everybody's talking about Arctic frost right now. We've got Kash Patel in there. What, if anything, is your forecast for what's to come?
Yeah, well, I mean, Kash Patel wrote the book on it. I met with him a lot. While he was working on that book. The book is called Government Gangsters, and I think the title's perfect because that's exactly what these guys behind Arctic frost are. There's a problem. I mean, a lot of the people who worked on Arctic frost are still in the FBI. So I think what Kash Patel needs to do is fire those who were working on Arctic frost. Those who didn't blow the whistle, which would be all of them, and yank their security clearances, because that's the next step after firing someone is you got to take away those security clearances because they then go use those to cash in and they're still able to access classified material. So yeah, Arctic frost is probably the biggest scandal. I mean, and it's hard to say that because every time we get done with an investigation like this,
right,
surely Uranium One and selling out our energy sector to Russia, it's got to be the biggest scandal, right? And then we do the Bidens, by the way, with a $1 billion private equity deal backed by the Bank of China for Hunter Biden with the Bohai Harvest, and then the Burisma. I mean, you've just got all these foreign governments, but. So every time we say this is the biggest scandal in modern American history, it's hard to rank them, but I would say Arctic frost has got to be at least the biggest domestic scandal, in law, FBI scandal, intelligence community scandal. But it's all wrapped up in Crossfire Hurricane. That targeted the Trump team. Now with Arctic frost, we've got hundreds of Congress individuals as well as private organizations getting swept up into this. So, treating it all as one gigantic like Obamagate scandal, I think, the Obamagate is by far the biggest scandal in American history.
You're absolutely right in that it seems every day the scandals just keep growing. It's almost like they want to make them bigger and bigger, so you forget about the relatively smaller scandals. So just sticking with Kash Patel for a moment, because he did write that book, Government Gangsters, but then I think a lot of people have questions about Kash Patel because when he became the FBI director, I think a lot of people are concerned that he maybe just got brought into the fold. One of the first things he told us is that there is no Epstein evidence. Pay no attention to all those boxes we took out of the building on the island years ago. Forget about all that stuff from his house in New York City, his house in Palm Beach. Don't worry about this missing minute or 3 minutes from the jail video. Forget about all that. Plus, Charlie Kirk got shot in the neck with a .30-06 round that would have exploded his head. I don't know if you do any hunting, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to believe anything that Kash Patel says. Do you have any insight into why he would not have done these things that you're talking about, fire these people at the FBI? I mean, it seems like he's doing more of the same, doesn't it?
Yeah, and when he was appointed FBI director, I thought to myself, I don't envy being put into that position because you're kind of faced with like either cleaning house with an agency that's probably the most dangerous agency. I mean, I don't believe it's not as simple as just firing the leadership. I mean, all the way down. And I wrote this book and I dedicated the book Compromised, How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. And I went administration by administration, director by director. Every single one ends up in the same spot. Maybe they wanted to do good. Maybe they were bad guys all along. But the agency seems to be just completely lawless. And, there's some good agents. We hear that all the time. Where's the whistleblowers? I would love to see some whistleblowers. And so as far as, whether Kash has become a part of it, whether it's a futile effort, whether you end up dead. I don't envy the FBI director because either you go along to get along or the next terrorist attack or the next, event that, gets missed, you get completely blamed on, it all gets blamed on you and you have blood on your hands and you're destroyed for all of history. So it's like a no-win situation being the FBI director. I'm not in his shoes, so I can't speak to, it may be just easier said than done to go in there and just overturn all the corruption. I wish it weren't. I hope he does, but I agree with you. I'm not seeing, the things I'd like to see.
I agree with you completely. The other aspect is they really do love plane crashes and car crashes. And so, I mean, who knows? Maybe there are threats. Louis Freeh, of course, was the FBI director, very closely associated with the Bidens. And I don't know if he was ever down for blowing any whistles or doing anything other than, leaving right before 9/11. They love that too, right? He leaves right before 9/11. Mueller comes in just days before it happens, and they can both sort of say, hey, I wasn't here, I just got here, we didn't know. It seems to be a pretty common occurrence.
Exactly.
Is there any
Exactly. I mean,
Seamus?
I don't want to spin conspiracy theories here, but I mean, you look at Butler and just a narrow miss on President Trump. You look at the Kirk assassination, and then something like a 9/11, and with all of the, either like he was on our radar, the FBI, and just look at all the school shootings. He was on our radar, but we missed it, or whatever. They brought him in several times. I mean, without going too conspiratorial, it's pretty there's enough credible shady instances where we don't have all the facts that one could be credibly threatened to either will do a Butler or a Kirk or let the next terrorist attack fall on you. At which point you got to either, I guess, resign or I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty tough situation. Our government's lawless. I think his book is right. It's government gangsters. I mean, people are wearing suits, but these are total thugs. I mean, just the Arctic frost and the names and there's plenty of names you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we've got Comey now under indictment. Any hope that'll stick?
Well, I think that, they were trying, the indictment was rushed. I mean, it could have come down years ago, but in order to fall within the statute of limitations, I think they're still trying to add some more crimes to it. So he certainly seems to have broken some laws. Just the lying. Same thing with Clapper and the leaking. We'll see. I'm a pretty cynical guy. I'm optimistic for the future. I don't live totally depressed. But after all these investigations and seeing everybody get away with it always, it's I can never go. I'm not going to tell anybody TikTok. Here's a hit of some hopium.
And forgive me, I had the wrong website earlier there. I wonder if that's not done on purpose to get people to not go to the Government Accountability Institute, but it is what is the correct G-A-I.org is the correct.
Yeah, well, and Jason, if you would, it's thedrilldown.com is where we publish all our receipts, all our investigations. So it's thedrilldown.com. The G-A-I.org is a little bit of a mouthful, so
yes.
thedrilldown.com is where you'll find a lot of good, high-quality content.
There you go. That's great. Oh, I love the logo here with the Capitol building. I mean, Seamus, it's so frustrating, particularly as you learn more about this. So the latest book focuses on the billionaires and the so-called no kings movement, but the ones who are acting like kings are these guys who operate in secret. They do whatever they want. They're funneling millions, even billions of dollars through these, it seems to me, illegal conflations of 501c3 and 501c4 organizations. We see tons of lawfare happening that way. People like Norm Eisen and others have created what are essentially law firms that can operate with nonprofit funds. It feels like there's no end.
Yeah, so we have built a database that is really special because I mentioned back for Clinton Cash, Peter Schweizer came and physically dropped off a 1.5 foot tall stack of Clinton Foundation paper 990s. They weren't OCR'd. They weren't, this is back in 2013, 2014. The technology was there, but we would manually go through these things. Like on paper, I'd enter the data into a spreadsheet,
Wow.
by hand. Now we've got some sophisticated tools, some AI tools where we're able to harvest, scrape all of thousands and thousands, I think hundreds of thousands of rows from the 990s themselves. So we have pulled in all of the Soros, all of the Tides, all of the Rockefeller, Arabella, funding network data, and so much more. Neville Roy Singham, this really radical guy who lives in China. We've got all the tech guys, all of their NGOs, and we're able to map the money flows with precision and very quickly. So what we did, I was at the President Trump's White House roundtable on Antifa a couple weeks ago, and all of the reporters there were they were the brave journalists who get on the ground like you, Jason, and kind of get into the, they're there documenting events as they happen in real time. I've never, thankfully, been beat up by Antifa, but I noticed I was just the one guy there who's kind of like the follow the money guy. And what I told President Trump and the cabinet was that Antifa, I mean, it's great that you're taking the threat seriously from these people committing violence in our cities, but the problem is much bigger. And so we follow the money to what we call the protest industrial complex, or Riot Inc. for short, and found that there is an entire ecosystem. I mean, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has multiple divisions. It's got the Antifa division, boots on the ground, but it's also got a PR and communications division. It's got a very well-funded legal division. This would be things like the National Lawyers Guild, or even the ACLU helps get these rioters, violent criminals, out of jail as quickly as possible, back onto the streets so that they can be at the next anti-ICE riot. And so you have to take the whole thing as a whole. I mean, you're not going to, nobody's against, I mean, we're all very much in favor of First Amendment protected activities like the right to peacefully assemble and protest. But when you're committing violent crimes, when you're committing arson and assaults on law enforcement and property crimes, the book needs to be thrown on. These people need to be locked up and put in jail for as long as possible. And anybody who is funding this, knowingly funding this kind of chaos and mayhem, well, they should be charged with it too, either whether with conspiracy type charges or something like a RICO, as President Trump has mentioned, specifically in relation to George Soros and his network. So that's what we do, is we follow the money. We found over $100 million going into Riot Inc. from these big NGOs. We also found more than $100 million from taxpayers, which is that really shocked President Trump, is that taxpayers indirectly are funding this. You give money, your taxes get taken out. Well, then the government then gives that to the Tides Network or the Rockefeller Network or the Soros Network for USAID or whatever type activities, spreading democracy or helping indoctrinate the youth with some school program or whatever it may be. But the money's fungible, so it goes into their accounts, and then they go fund, various 501c3 and C4 riot organizations, things that are professional protesters. They go city to city, doing things like Tesla Takedown and May Day and No Kings. And yeah, most of the attendees are not paid and they're not committing violence. So we're totally in favor of peaceful protests, but the ones like in Portland, Seattle, Chicago, and elsewhere, down in Atlanta, there was a pretty violent one a couple years ago, 60 people arrested for domestic terrorism. I mean, just firebombing police. So, that's the stuff we're tracking.
And you bring up a very good point. Like, look, anything that you fund and allow to carry on, it's going to grow. You mentioned the Tesla takedowns. I think we're on the verge of a potentially even more dangerous situation. I just want to play this short clip for you. Maybe you've seen it. This was a Tesla takedown in March where I encountered Zoran.
You're running for mayor? Yes. Isn't this not First Amendment activity, shutting down a business 3 weeks in a row? How many New York City businesses could tolerate to close their location 3 weeks in a row? This is an economic attack on Tesla. How can you sanction this? You will never be mayor. This is not the use of the First Amendment. This is, step away from me. Don't advance towards me like that. Yeah, you did. You just came up to me in a threatening manner and you're advancing.
They got thugs. They're out there with signs that say burn a Tesla, clear incitements to violence. They intimidated customers who tried to approach the showroom. They had to close it early. Obviously, it's not First Amendment activity. I mean, if they went to the park and said, we hate Elon Musk, don't buy a Tesla, that's one thing. But when you start to make it impossible for the thing to conduct business, those were serious questions I posed to him. If this were a bakery or something, 3 weekends in New York City with no business could put you out of business. Why would Elon Musk, why would the NYPD allow this?
Oh, that's a great clip. I saw it when you did that, and you're exactly right. I mean, that's not First Amendment protected activity when you're harassing and disrupting commerce, voluntary commerce. I mean, that is, and they do this kind of stuff too. I mean, it's like we are again totally in favor of First Amendment activities, but shutting down the highways or shutting down the airports. So that people who might need like someone in a hospital, I mean, so they do this kind of stuff and they act like, oh, well, this is just nonviolent resistance. And it's like, well, what about the people in an ambulance who need to get to the hospital? So they're high. I mean, you were exactly right with your question. I'm glad you grilled him on that, because it is not, in my opinion, First Amendment to be burning Teslas or, causing damage, assaulting people, getting physical with people. None of that is a First Amendment protected activity, and they need to be arrested. And I don't, I feel so bad for New Yorkers. I wish you were right in that video. I hope, maybe there'll be a miracle, but unfortunately, I don't see things getting much better for New York anytime soon.
I agree. And it's also, I mean, whether he gets elected or not, I agree with that statement, but it's looking increasingly likely that I was incorrect. I hope not, but he may well become mayor just a few days from now. I mean, it's amazing, setting aside his ethnicity and religion, just his lack of experience, his lack of ability. I think it would be an exceptional individual who would have the wisdom and organizational skills to run something as complicated as New York City at the age of 33. And there is nothing about him that says that he's qualified to do that.
No, exactly right. And he's a self-avowed democratic socialist, which is essentially the political arm of Antifa, or Antifa is basically the paramilitary arm of the democratic socialists. I mean, you just couldn't get more radical, aside from the radical Islam connections. Just the radical Marxist progressive connections are alarming. But he's got powerful forces behind him. He's not going to. He's a pretty face like AOC. Who young and charismatic, I suppose, who gets elected, but they don't really know what's going on. There was reports from Asra Nomani just the other day. We confirmed the numbers. George Soros and the Open Society Institute, they've got an entire network of advisors who will actually be doing the day-to-day policy running, which is going to be a disaster for New York, opening prisons, rent controls that are going to really make everybody's rent more expensive. This kind of stuff is just recipes for disaster, and it's right out of the Soros playbook.
Unbelievable. So is it, in your opinion, that George Soros intends to short the dollar? I mean, when you collapse, I just think back 24 years ago, we had 9/11. Essentially, one building was destroyed, and the entire, certainly U.S., if not the world economy, was impacted by that. If you start really damaging the business climate in New York City, I just don't see how people can't see the kind of knock-on economic effects. And again, setting aside his radical policies or what he might do, even what he's saying, he says we need to make New York more affordable by taxing the rich and all this. It's a little bit like the plan. I don't know if you remember, in the 1980s, they released this thing called the Cadillac Cimarron, which was a low-cost Cadillac. And it's kind of like a McDonald's veggie burger. It just does, no one who wants an inexpensive car is buying a Cadillac, and no one who is buying a Cadillac wants an inexpensive car. It's not about making New York City more affordable. It's about increasing the economic engine that is New York City, so that everything that flows out of it makes people more wealthy, so that then they can afford things. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. And I think we're going to see a flight, mass exodus, probably. I don't know how long it'll take, but, just like after COVID with the crazy. I mean, that's why I feel so bad for New Yorkers, is it's like, well, you've got Mamdani, but then next up you've got Cuomo, who was a proven disaster. Many COVID deaths on his hands. So, but yeah, I think you'll see mass exodus. Maybe that's a play here for the control oligarch billionaire class who like people like Mamdani, which ordinarily you'd say, what the heck would a capitalist or someone who's made so much money like a socialist for? Well, it's like they're immune to the tax the rich, eat the rich. That just refers to anybody who's making ends meet at 250 to above, not the George Soroses who have all their money either in tax shelters or set up a nonprofit dark money structure to not have to pay taxes with. So Maybe it's about scooping up some of the real estate cheaper. Ultimately, I think, Soros, he just really is a radical Marxist who thinks America ought to be taken down a peg and funds all of the kinds of people who are going to see that through.
I mean, I know I'm trying to sort of keep asking you to come to conclusions, which is difficult to do, but it really seems like the only thing I can conclude is that these people the control oligarchs, they want to destroy the economy really at large, where, as you said, their assets, their yachts, their mansions, their holdings in foreign currency or gold or however these guys have money, they seem to be completely insulated. And if they collapse the economic structure that everybody else relies upon, they'll just become more wealthy, as they did in COVID. It just seems like the only logical conclusion we can arrive at is that this is a plan for utter destruction.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll give you two points. I'll give you from the beginning chapter of the book and from the end chapter. The first chapter is called The Good Club, and it documents a meeting that happened in New York City in May 2009. It was convened by Bill Gates, George Soros, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey was there. It was roughly 15 people. It was at Rockefeller University in New York. The context is that Barack Obama just been elected. They all had done a lot to get him there. And they said, we need to have kind of a strategy session to figure out what are we going to do with this opportunity we've been given. We need to come up with an umbrella cause under which all of our various pet projects can unite. And Bill Gates suggested it. They all got on board, and the cause was overpopulation. And that's a true story. You can look up the meeting of the Good Club. It's reported in mainstream press. Overpopulation is the biggest cause. You'll have to get into the book to see how they plan to deal with all of that, but I'll give you a little flashback that is covered in chapter 1. The Rockefeller Foundation funded something called the Population Council, as well as Planned Parenthood, going back to the beginnings with Margaret Sanger. Their abortion is obviously a great way to control population growth. It's been wildly successful. But there's this document that is between Planned Parenthood and the Population Council. Rockefeller funded both. And it's saying, what are some ways, and there's just brainstorming, spitballing ways that you can keep population growth down. And my favorite one, I mean, it's so dark and insidious, but my favorite one was just a 2-word bullet point: chronic depression. They had things on there like promote homosexuality, LGBTQ lifestyle, but just chronic depression was under the economics. I mean, of course, encouraging women into the workplace, figuring out ways that people cannot have more kids. Really dark stuff. It's there in black and white. It's called the Jaffe, Jaffe memo. You can read it, read the memo, but I document the context around it in the book. So that's one: chronic depression, economic malaise. These guys are truly Malthusian. I mean, these control oligarchs really believe there's too many people breathing their air, especially when you're in New York City. So that's one. Then we get to the Endgame chapter, and this way the whole book goes through central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, controlling the food supply and the war on farmers, all these other control schemes. But we get to the Endgame chapter, and most people can't believe that these guys have stuff in common with the Chinese Communist Party, that Bill Gates praises the CCP. We're now actually finding out, and this is before the book was published. I didn't know this, but just recently Chuck Grassley's investigation in Bill and Melinda Gates funding CCP front groups. But I have in chapter 10 all of these China connections to these guys. They actually are pro-China, and really what they want to do with an end game is social credit score. They want to use all of these mechanisms for control so that they can cut out any sort of critics of theirs, any sort of threats to their control schemes. They want to be able to shut it down, much like the authoritarian CCP does in Beijing. So that's a spoiler alert on the book, but that's where we're going. They want chronic depression for a variety of reasons, which include not being able to have big families, and the other is they want to bring us closer to CCP style control.
It's amazing. And I mean, that Jaffe memo, I hadn't heard about that before. It goes back to 1969, but it sounds like what you're talking about really is a really deep-seated and underhanded level of psychological control that goes to movies and music and now social media. As you said, promoting homosexuality, promoting even promiscuity, preventing people from kind of the opposite of what Charlie Kirk was talking about. And with regard to the social credit score and all that, we really got a taste of that with the government, Department of Homeland Security, this disinformation governance board that was headed up by this vile creature who's become one of my arch enemies. I'm in several legal actions with Nina Jankowicz. This person lied.
I just the Mary Poppins song is now echoing in my ears.
I don't know if you know these details, and not to make it about me at all, but just about her. I was the one who pointed out that while she was working for the Department of Homeland Security, she appeared to be receiving funding from several foreign nonprofits to a privately owned LLC that she was the sole member of. One day after I published that, this disinformation governance board was completely disbanded. She was released. She'll say she resigned. I say she was fired. And the question that I was asking was, shouldn't this person be registered under FARA? And sure enough, she came back 6 months later, registered under FARA, but not before she went and lied to the court in Arlington, Virginia, and the police, and got a temporary restraining order against me, essentially making it illegal for me to even mention her name, utilizing various Lawfare-connected law firms and lawyers. She was able to restrict my freedom of speech. If I had even mentioned her name on social media during the time that this restraining order was in place, I could have been arrested. I wasn't allowed to purchase a gun. I wasn't allowed to exercise the Second Amendment. I wasn't allowed to exercise the First Amendment. Even though she was in Congress and things, it was essentially illegal for me to talk about her. I had to outsmart her highly deceptive and I allege criminal legal team with counter lawfare tactics to get that TRO lifted, and it's still an ongoing legal battle with her. Completely disgusting.
Yeah, and good for you, Jason. That is one of the solutions. I mean, in a way, although your story makes it seem like, who would want to bark up that tree? But we got to just keep exposing them. So that's great work. And you see that when they're exposed, they retreat. Of course, they fight back too. But this is, and I believe Nina Jankowicz is in the Disinformation Governance Board. It is specifically mentioned in like the mind control chapter, or the maybe information control. But certainly none of the details that you reported. That's great work. These are kind of like, they believe, these control oligarchs and their bureaucrat, puppets believe in like these public-private partnerships where they get to kind of have all of the powers of the government, but also none of the accountability or transparency that, of being a private sector entity. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to have any transparency in their movement. They want to be able to be paid from private sources. So great reveals there. But then they want the awesome powers of the government, like being able to crush you and have the monopoly on the coercive use of force. So, we've really got to wake up. I mean, that's what the World Economic Forum is doing in the post-Klaus Schwab era. They've put Larry Fink in charge of it. They say public-private partnerships are going to be our bread and butter. And so, we got to expose these kinds of things. It's not good stuff. And it happens at state, federal, local levels. I mean, after the Charlie Kirk assassination, we looked at a lot of groups out there in Utah and found that one where it had connections to the United Nations and World Economic Forum. No links to the assassination itself, but it was just kind of staggering that, colleges and stuff are now partnering with the UN and the World Economic Forum. It's crazy.
It really is. And, these are all different parts that fit together in a puzzle. And the public-private partnership, the abuse of 501c3 and 501c4 organizations really enables the lawfare aspect of this, which underpins kind of everything, because as you have pointed out, either directly or indirectly, they're able to take advantage, for instance, with the Disinformation Governance Board. They're able to do things with social media where they can say, well, Twitter, for instance, was a private company. So if they shut down Jason or Seamus or anybody's ability to exercise the First Amendment, you can't say that they're even subject to the First Amendment because they're a private club who can decide that you broke their rules because you said something bad about transgenderism or whatever it is that they like. But at the same time, they use these lawfare tactics to hide behind legislation like the 47 USC Section 230 this protection that social media sites have from any kind of legal accountability. So, I don't know if you know this guy, Adam Sharp, but he was very important in the rise of Barack Obama. He was a Senate staffer who then became a Twitter executive. He's also very closely in a roundabout sort of way, he's closely connected to the former FBI General Counsel, who is now a U.S. District Court Judge, Valerie Caproni. This all has to do with the control of the First Amendment and, sorry, I'm scrolling through this so quickly, very annoying. But this is how they took control of Twitter and took everybody out. And they're protected from any kind of legal action that you might normally had, as you said, through these really devious public-private partnerships.
Yes. I mean, that's really good stuff. I got to jump, but I want to compare notes with you because you know so much. So I've been following you for a really long time. I'm a little past my next interview, and they're hitting me up, but that's all right. Let's connect offline, and I'd love to join your show again soon, Jason.
That would be great, Seamus. And everybody can find you on X at Seamus Bruner. Don't forget to buy the book, Control Oligarchs. And it's been great speaking with you. I definitely look forward to future conversations. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.